On today's show, the Houston Rockets getting absolutely manhandled by the New Orleans Pelicans without Zion, without Brandon Ingram, in a wire-to-wire blowout. Stephen Silas gets himself ejected at the end of the first quarter because of frustrations boiling over from this game, as well as taking maybe some exception to some of the one-sided officiating early in this one. I mean, what happens moving forward with the Rockets head coaching situation? This is the type of game that usually gets head coaches fired. We're going to talk about it coming up right here on Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can help us out tremendously by commenting anything below. But for today's episode, let me know your thoughts on Stephen Silas getting himself ejected from this game into the first quarter. Look, this had been, what was it? Was it out of frustration? Do you think Stephen Silas was just pissed at how the game was going? Do you think he was trying to light a fire under his guys? Do you think it was maybe a bit performative? Right? That, we're down big and the officiating's been kind of one-sided. Let me go out there and, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But man, this game sucked. This game sucked like 8 different ways to Sunday. It was awful. Wire-to-wire blowout. The Rockets never led. The Pelicans never not led in this game. The Pels led by as many as 31. So the issue is, you look at the final score and you're like, 119, 108. Oh, okay, the Rockets were kind of competitive. Yeah, for the box score watchers out there, and for people that didn't actually watch this game, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. No, this game was bad. This game was the Pels were never in danger of losing this game. It felt like the Rockets were mounting like a crazy, fake comeback in the final, 90 seconds with their ragtag bench unit out there. And we were like, oh my God, is this going to be Boban's 13 and 35 moment? And no, not at all. But where this game really, got turned on its head and where things really took a turn for the worse was the end of the first quarter. So, I mean, look, the Rockets, they came out of the gate. They had terrible energy. It looked bad. They were getting outplayed by the Pelicans early. Alperen Sengun looked especially bad early on. He was 0-4 at one point. Got blocked multiple times down low. Just a bad, ugly all-around game. Jalen Green got blocked by Herb Jones at one point, which felt just add fuel to all the fire of the Herb Jones-Jalen Green debate, which was just awful. It was a bad first quarter. And there had been, for sure, it felt like some one-sided officiating. It felt like there were some calls that were being made that were, either ticky-tack or favorable for the Pelicans, and then it felt like the Rockets weren't getting, refs were swallowing the whistle on the other side of the floor. So I get that. There were some frustrating calls being made, but you can't let the referees, whether the calls are going for you or against you, you can't let them impact the game. You just can't, right? You got to, mentally, you got to block that crap out. And referees whistled an offensive foul on Usman Garuba near the end of the first quarter, and that was what caused Stephen Silas to just explode. He was storming midcourt, he was yelling, he was pointing at the officials, all that, and he got himself ejected. That was the moment where it was okay, yeah, this game was so bad, so ugly. Rockets were trailing by 20 at that point, and Stephen Silas just, lost his cool, right? And so he was asked about that after the game.
I don't know what it was. It was definitely reaction for sure, but we needed to play better. And I don't necessarily think me being off the floor makes us play better, but, We needed something.
So, yeah, I mean, they definitely did need something. This team they were playing almost, lifeless, if you will. And the Rockets actually wound up outscoring. I want to do the quick math on this for a second. Is 30-21. That's 51. This is never a good idea. 86. I believe it was 86-74 the rest of the way. 30-23 is 53. Yeah, so 86-74. The Rockets outscored the Pelicans 86-74 the rest of the way. So they outplayed the Pelicans the rest of the game. Now, do we credit Stephen Silas and his, is he a martyr for getting ejected and, inspiring the Rockets to play that well? Or did they just play better under John Lucas, who, curiously enough, was, very actively coaching on the sidelines? I mean, at one point, he pulled Alperen Sengun out of the game very, very quickly in the second half to go with Bruno Fernando. 3 minutes into the second half, pulled Alperen Sengun out, had a moment where he was actively tearing into Tari Eason for like 20 seconds on the sideline after a blown coverage, after a bad play. So, I worry for John Lucas's health. Like John Lucas should not be coaching this basketball team. Because he looks like he gets so worked up over on the sidelines. But it's also such an interesting dichotomy to see the differences in how they coach, right? Stephen Silas usually very, controlled, measured on the sideline, whereas John Lucas is just like all of that over on the sidelines. Look, this is the type of game, you lose to a team without two of their two best players, and you come out and you look woefully unprepared. The guys aren't playing well. None of that. Like, this is the type of game that gets coaches fired. Like, this is the type of game where, jokingly, people were saying, like, oh, yeah, Stephen Silas is packing his bags at halftime, right? And he's heading home. And to add the fuel to the fire of him saying, I don't know if necessarily this team plays better without me on the floor. That's, the choice of words there. Rockets fans have been bludgeoning that quote into the ground. Look, Stephen Silas has had a rough go of it over this last month or so. December has been brutal. And I don't know how much longer he's going to have as the head coach of the Rockets. There were rumblings with the guys over at ESPN 97.5, John Granato, Lance Zierlein, and John Granato is notoriously close with Tillman Fertitta. And so if he's hearing rumblings that Stephen Silas is on the hot seat and they made, a bet, is Stephen Silas even going to be the coach of this Rockets team by February 1st? Look, you still take it with a grain of salt, but I think there's something there. And based on, again, December was kind of my mental note of just, all right, they need to show us something. Stephen Silas needs to show us something in the month of December during that significant, that home stretch where they had a lot of practice time. They weren't traveling. They could, really iron out some of the issues with the team, work on things. And things just got worse and worse and worse. And they just kept slipping downhill to where it felt like the team regressed considerably in December. And it feels like that New Year's Eve game was the catalyst where it was just all right, Eric Gordon fed up, drops the no improvement comment, and now they're still out here struggling, right? They couldn't close out the Mavericks. Now they lose to the Pelicans, and now they've got a brutal second night of a back-to-back going up against the Utah Jazz. So it kind of feels like Stephen Silas' days are numbered, which feels bad because he's such a nice dude, and Stephen Silas is not solely to blame for this situation whatsoever. The Rockets are in a crap situation top to bottom because of roster, because of the players and their inability to execute stuff and play well at times, because of the basketball IQ of the guys on the roster. Also because of the roster construction. This is not an NBA roster. There's talent on the roster for sure, but there are some glaring issues with this Rockets roster, and that is not on Stephen Silas. That's on the front office and the roster construction and Rafael Stone. So I have sympathy for Stephen Silas in the situation that he was thrust into. he's never been given a fair shot to like compete and win with any of the NBA rosters that he's coached for this Rockets team. And that sucks, right? That sucks to have that on your resume. So I sympathize with that. But at the same time, I think it's probably time to move on if you're the Houston Rockets with Stephen Silas, and that sucks. But that's just where the team is at. That's where the organization is at. And I don't expect things to just suddenly magically get better without Stephen Silas, but I also don't think he's the guy moving forward. I think we've seen enough, and I think it's time to just move on, cut ties, save everybody a little bit of grief rather than going through this whole song and dance for the rest of the season. With that, I do want to talk about some of the standouts from this game, some of the few and far between positives from this Rockets game, things that I noticed that I picked up on over the course of the game. We'll talk about that coming up in just a moment, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories that go along with it? Then you gotta try Built Bar. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Built Bar is the #1 protein bar on the market, and for a very good reason. Every single bar is coated in 100% delicious chocolate. They're not gritty or chocolate like other protein bars. They're soft, they're easy to chew, and you really can't even tell they're eating a protein bar. Look, healthy is actually tasty with Built Bar. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't even think that they're good for you. Every single bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit for the New Year's, right? Stick to those New Year's resolutions. They have so many incredible flavors to choose from. Churro, peanut butter, coconut almond, cookies and cream, salted caramel, strawberry, raspberry. The list goes on and on and on. My personal favorite, coconut brownie chunk. But you really can't go wrong with a single bar on their menu. Gotta check them out. Head over to Built.com to check out the best tasting protein bars. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your very next order of the #1 protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's talk a little bit about some of the individual performances from this game, because that's kind of what it feels like. Is, the team as a whole played atrociously bad. Bad effort, bad energy, all of it. Yeah, they outscored the Pelicans over the final 3 quarters, but when you go down 45-22 and you take a 23-point L in the first quarter, there's going to be some inherent, all right, the other team's going to kind of coast a little bit. And at no point did the Rockets make a push and really feel like they were in the game, right? They went point for point in the second quarter, 30-30. So they still trailed 23 at halftime. They took a slight L in the third quarter. And, so they actually, the Pels built on that lead going into the fourth quarter. And then, the Rockets outplayed the Pels in the fourth quarter, 35-21, when the game was basically over. So I see some people pushing that narrative that the Rockets actually played harder for John Lucas. I don't think that they did. I don't know. I'm torn on it. He was more actively coaching, but it very much looked like the guys were kind of mentally checked out. One guy that I will give credit for not looking mentally checked out was Jabari Smith Jr., who finished the game 14 points, 13 rebounds, had an assist, had 2 steals, had a block, only 1 turnover. Was only 3 of 10 shooting from the floor. A bad shooting night. 2 of 8 from deep. Was 6 of 8 at the free throw line. Jabari just competes no matter what. And I do respect the hell out of him for that. There was a point the Rockets were down 27. There was a loose ball on the floor. Jabari goes crashing to the floor to try and recover this loose ball, and the Rockets actually managed to, John Lucas managed to call a timeout while Jabari had possession of the ball before another Pels player got his hands on it. Those are the types of plays where, look, nobody would really fault this team for, after you get your butt kicked that badly early in the game, to start going through the motions, to, just kind of give up, hang your head in this game. And that's just not who Jabari is as a player. And I liked seeing that fight from him. I liked seeing that intensity from him. So that was refreshing to see. It was a toss up between KJ Martin and Jabari Smith Jr., I think, in this one for LOR player of the game. I'm going to give it to Jabari. Even just for that moment, just for the fight that he showed throughout the game. Yeah, I'm going to give Jabari LOR player of the game from this one. But KJ Martin was also good off the Rockets bench. 16 points, 7 of 7 shooting, 2 of 2 from deep, didn't miss a single shot. had 2 rebounds, had an assist, had a couple steals, had a block. KJ was doing his job, right? Checked into the game, made his presence felt, was impactful. Very few other bench players. Like, it felt like up and down the Rockets bench, very little other impact in this game from the Rockets bench unit. It felt like that's where the lead ballooned. It got even worse in the first quarter. There were turnovers. Garuba whistled for a couple moving screens, which, again, we can debate the legitimacy of them. I do think that the officiating was really problematic in this game, but at the same time, you just gotta be better than that. Ty Washington had a couple turnovers early in the game. That's that bench unit when the Rockets went to that bench group. That's when the Pels extended and built out that lead near the end of the first quarter. It was just bad. It was ugly. But going down the rest of the line, I will say Alperen Sengun, the fact that he started the game 0 of 4, got blocked a couple times, looked like he was all out of sorts offensively, did come back and finish, right? So he started 0 of 4. He finished the game 5 of 11. So he went on to actually score effectively from the floor after really getting shut down and struggling early. Finished the game with 13 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals, a block. Alpi was producing. Alpi had some production. So it's curious as to why they're in the third quarter, I should say, he got benched so early for Bruno Fernando, while he was a +2 while he was on the floor, it felt like Bruno wasn't doing much of anything out there. 4 points, 2 boards, 1 assist, 1 of 2 shooting, 8 minutes played. For some reason, Bruno screens and then pops out to the 3-point line consistently. I don't know why that is. He screens and then he flares out to the 3-point line. And you're like, what? Is Bruno going to start shooting threes? I don't know. And Alpi does it as well, but Alpi screens and then starts to roll. And then if the roll isn't there, then he resets and kind of goes back out to the 3-point line. There's a lot of times Bruno just sets the screen and then just drifts out to the 3-point line without rolling at all. And it's like, well, if you're not rolling, what are you doing on the floor, right? I don't know. Is a mess. Eric Gordon continues to get booed by all of Louisiana when he steps foot in the Smoothie King Center, which I still think is one of the funniest things to this day. Right? Eric Gordon steps out there on Smoothie King court and they start booing, and he touches the ball and they start booing, and Eric's just like, oh my. God, my new favorite drop. Eric Gordon turns the ball over. Oh my. Eric Gordon attempts the 3-pointer. Oh my. Stephen Silas gets ejected. Oh my. Oh my. I can't. That drop is too much fun. Yeah, Eric Gordon in this game, 13 points, 5 of 12 shooting. Kind of a whatever night from Eric Gordon. Zeros across the board elsewhere for Eric Gordon. No rebounds, no assists, no steals, no blocks, no turnovers. Eric Gordon was out there to just shoot the basketball and get buckets, and that was it. Jalen Green in this game, 16 points on 5 of 15 shooting. Struggled with the efficiency in this game. Did have 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Had a block where he recovered and blocked a corner 3-point shooter, which is kind of crazy. 1 turnover. I did like my silver lining from this game for Jalen Green. He finished with his left hand multiple times in this game, and that's been an area that has been very problematic for Jalen Green, where he does not finish with his left well whatsoever. So seeing him actually, get to the rack, finish with his left hand, take some contact, get to the free throw line a few times in this game, those were some positives out of Jalen Green's night. And then Kevin Porter Jr., 11 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 2 turnovers. Relatively kind of quiet night for KPJ, just 4 of 11 shooting, 2 of 7 from long distance. It was a quiet off night for everybody on the Rockets team, right? Everybody struggled, right? Jabari 3 of 10, Alpi 5 of 11 is, so after going 0 of 4. EG 5 of 12, KPJ 4 of 11, Jalen 5 of 15. It was just a bad all around night. So anybody who tries to pin this loss squarely on KPJ's shoulders, anybody who tries to roll out KPJ was minus 23 in his minute, everybody on this Rockets team sucked in this game, except KJ. KJ was good. KJ was good, and Jabari showed heart. And those are my 2 those were the two finalists for your LOR player of the game because of those reasons. And I don't know. I like Sengun and Jalen. They had so-so games over the rest of the course of things after a rough start. It was one of those games like it's hard to draw like significant positives from this type of a game because it was so bad all around. Like I don't like sitting here just talking about negative stuff, but it's like what other positives do you draw from this type of a game where you lose so badly to a team missing its two best players? You get completely outplayed. Jose Alvarado at one point in this game was outplaying the Rockets backcourt, right? Like Jose Alvarado and his production, his points, his assists, whatever, was better than Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green combined in this game. Combined.
Oh my.
Like that's not good. That's bad. You can't have that happen. You can't let a backup point guard outplay your starting backcourt and expect to win a game. Coming up, I want to talk about final thoughts from what this game means moving forward. Stephen Silas's role with the Rockets, how much longer he has as the head coach, what they need to do to try and bounce back against the Utah Jazz. We're going to get there in just one moment, but first, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with the people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. You can identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to post your job for the most qualified candidates available. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Rockets don't exactly get a chance to rest off of this L against the Pelicans because they got to come straight back to Houston, to Toyota Center, to deal with the Utah Jazz. That's not going to be a fun matchup. Like, after how poorly the Rockets played against the Pelicans, This is a good Utah Jazz team, right? They're 19-21. They've started, to lose some games. I mean, they're not, at complete full strength. They're missing Colin Sexton, but they've got everybody else. Lauri Markkanen is going to be a handful for the Rockets to deal with. And I don't think there were people right after the Pelicans game, during the Pelicans game, right after Stephen Silas got ejected from the first quarter, cracking jokes, pointing out, being like, okay, well, Stephen Silas might not coach another game as the Rockets, right? Had this game not been on the front night of a back-to-back, the Rockets aren't going to can Stephen Silas like right before the Jazz game, right? However, if the Jazz game is another dumpster fire, you might see some changes made over the weekend, right? Because the Rockets have 2 days off, Friday, Saturday, and then they play again on Sunday. And then they have another 2 days off after that, Monday, Tuesday, beginning of next week. So you could very easily those are having back-to-back days off like that, where you can make some tough decisions, and guys can sit down and discuss, and the brain trust, the powers that be, Tillman Fertitta, Patrick Fertitta, Rafael Stone, all the guys can sit down and figure out, all right, well, what are we doing here, right? What direction are we going to go? Is Stephen going to stay, or is he going to be gone? Because again, this is the type of game where you come out woefully unprepared. You can talk about readiness, energy, all that kind of stuff, but this is kind of like the stuff that Eric Gordon's been talking about all season, right? Is like you come out against a Pelicans team that had no business being that good against you, and they wiped the floor with the Rockets. It was really embarrassing when you think about it. CJ McCollum got whatever he wanted offensively, 28 points, 10 of 21 shooting. They actually did a decent job defending Valanciunas, 6 of 15 inside, or 6 of 15 shooting, but he got 17 boards, right? Rockets are a team that very rarely gets out-rebounded this season. Pels out-rebounded the Rockets 51-43. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, the Pels were just fighting harder on the glass. They were working harder than the Rockets. I really don't know what else to say other than the Pels just completely outplayed the Rockets. And it feels like there haven't been many games this season that have felt this bad, where like the Pels were just in full control of the game from the jump to the end, right? Like, the Rockets have had plenty of games where like they've been in it, they've been competitive, and then things have fallen apart like late in the game, especially early this season. And you're like, yeah, these are competitive losses. Like, that's cool. And then they've had games where the wheels come completely off against a team that they shouldn't happen against, right? Like the Spurs games, choking against the Magic, giving up late against the Dallas Mavericks the first go around, where the Rockets had that dominant third quarter and then just completely choked the game away in the fourth. Like, those games are frustrating because they should have won some of those games, right? They should have been able to hold on. They should have been able to tough it out. And then they've had some of the actual like really positive wins, right? Where you're like, okay, they beat the Bucks. They beat the 76ers in double overtime, right? So I struggle because I don't want to sit here and pile onto them. But I'm also just sick and tired of like the young player excuse, right? Like, I hate that excuse. They're a young team. They're going to make, like, yeah, they're a young team. They're going to make some mistakes. I get that, right? But if anything, if you're a young team, then the one excuse that you shouldn't have is you should be giving 110% effort every moment that you're out there on the court, right? Every guy. At no point do you look at this roster and you're like, oh, well, you know, they've got veterans. They're going through the motions. They got dead legs. They're tired. You know, back-to-back game, whatever. No, like, the effort cannot be excused. And that's where, unfortunately, for this Rockets team, especially over the last, like, month or so in December, it feels like the effort continues to slip, right? It feels like they don't come out with the right energy to start games. It feels like they start hanging their heads. They start giving up. They start not putting their best foot forward, right? They're not fighting. They're not fighting through the adversity. They're not trying to compete as these games start to get out of hand, as they start to go sideways. And that, to me, is the inexcusable part. I get it. They're going to schematically, you know, rotations on defense, where to be on offense, how to execute certain plays. I get that. You're going to mess stuff up occasionally because you're a young team. That I can live with. Cannot live with the lack of effort, cannot live with the lack of heart, the lack of pride to go out there and just let a team manhandle you the way that the Pelicans did. That's like, at that point, you got to play with a chip on your shoulder, right? And the Rockets, I don't know, they kind of like started fighting back, and they showed some moments where they were like putting together some stops, doing this, that, and the other. But at no point did they actually like cut into the lead and really make it a game. Like, the Pels hovered at a 20-point lead the rest of the way. They were dominant and in control of this game. And the Pels are a good team. Like, they are a very good team without their two best players. And they were just like, you know what? Go in there, take care of business against a Rockets team. This Rockets team's a tune-up. Right? They are a tune-up team for most guys. The teams can get away with resting their guys, and they can walk out there and kind of walk all over this Rockets team, which is really, really disappointing to see. That's not where you thought this team would be relative to expectations coming into this season, but that's where this team is at currently, and it's really, really disappointing. With that, we are owed a tankathon spin. Because if the Rockets take a fat L and an ugly L like this one, our only saving grace is, yeah, there's some, you know, I tried to find some positives to talk about, but the main saving grace is the Rockets have actually moved ahead now in lottery odds of the Detroit Pistons. The Rockets now have the second best lottery odds across the entire NBA, trailing only the Charlotte Hornets. They are 10-28. And they have the second best lottery odds. So we are going to spin the lottery wheel and see where they land in the Wemby and Scoot sweepstakes, if you will. Let's check out our numbers. Let's see how we're feeling here. All right, and we hit the spin.
Oh my.
Not great. Rockets fall all the way down to pick number 5. San Antonio jumps up 3 spots to pick number 1. Washington jumps up 1,000,000 spots to pick number 2. The Lakers jump up 7 spots to pick number 3, and then that pick conveys to the New Orleans Pelicans. So just add insult to injury, salt to the wound, twist the knife, if you will, after this loss to the Pels. The Hornets fall to pick number 4, and again, the Rockets land at pick number 5. So not a great drawing if you're the Houston Rockets. It's unfortunate. So not only did we take an L against the Pelicans, we took an L here on the Tankathon spin as well. Just a rough all-around day. With that, that's going to be how we wrap this thing up. I hope that we can come back and be able to talk about a more competitive game against the Jazz. I hope that they come out with a bit of a chip on their shoulders, because I want to be able to talk about a team that is fighting and competing, right? I don't want to talk about a team that rolls over and gives up and lets Herbert Jones, of all players, beat you up and down the basketball court. I don't like doing that. I don't like talking about these L's. It's frustrating, but at the same time, shout out to everybody who was in the Rockets Watch game, because it was my turn to host Rockets Watch, and that game would have been so miserable to go through solo, and Rockets Watch actually gives us a chance to, look, misery loves company, right? If you're listening to this podcast after that type of an L, shout out to you. I commend you. Misery loves company. And if I was going through this, alone by myself, it'd be 1,000 times worse. But at least Rockets fans together, we are going through this misery as a collective group, as a unit, as a team. And that makes it a little bit more bearable at times. Not by much, but it helps a bit. So with that, I salute you, Rockets fans, the diehards who are sticking by this team through thick and thin, sticking by this podcast, hanging out in Rockets Watch with us, all of that. So shout out to you. You know what? No. You know what? I changed my answer. I changed my Locked on Rockets player of the game here at the end of the episode. I am retroactively, I'm taking it away from Jabari. You, the Rockets fan who sat through that 48 minutes of BS, you are the Locked on Rockets player of the game. It's like the Times Person of the Year when it's like, you were the time. You are the Locked on Rockets player of the game for this one, for sitting through that clown fiesta against the New Orleans Pelicans. That is how we're going to wrap up this show. That's how we're going to end things. So shout out to you, the viewer, the listener, the fan. You're the Locked on Rockets player of the game on today's episode. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the show, especially after that type of a game. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app. Free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also on YouTube. Go to YouTube. Let me know your comments on Stephen Silas's ejection. Let me know your comments on this game. Let me know where your head is at, right? It's a safe space here at Locked on Rockets. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.